نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم وصحبه وبعد الحرمات الدين القويم. اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Inna alhamdulillahi ta'ala. All praise and all glory is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for affording all of us the opportunity to be here this evening. Indeed, this topic, al-mirath, inheritance, is amongst the topics that is essential to our lives and something that is needed in our daily understanding and practice in how the way we will accumulate and put across our wealth and our livelihood, as well as we look after our children and so, because the Quran gives us that indication of our wealth and our children being the beauty and the main attraction of this world, and most of our time is spent in that. The objective of this evening's topic and the way it came into being present here this evening is that amongst the ulama group of the Darul Uloom Trinidad and Tobago, we had also the graduates of the Darul Uloom. We normally have a monthly meeting which we discuss different types of topics within and amongst ourselves. And amongst these topics, this was one of the topic that we were trying to make awareness within the country and build some level of consciousness amongst our Muslim brothers and sisters. And at the same time, sitting at the chair of that organization and being the chair of this organization, I saw it fit at time to utilize the opportunity that we start here firstly in bringing about some level of discussion and awareness amongst us, the general community, in the building up towards the understanding and continuous spread of this important message and the dawah of mirath, inheritance. And therefore, my dear respected brothers and sisters, it is with this intention that we have embarked on this particular drive of building this particular relationship with our brothers and sisters, in particular of this particular law in Islam. Many a times in Islam, as Muslims, we make ourselves available and avail ourselves of many things. But when it comes to this particular law of inheritance, there are many challenges in our mind, or sometimes we are ignorant of the fact of what has to be done, and sometimes ourselves in particular really not paying attention to where we are really heading in life. And I would like to have and welcome who is here with us today, Mufti Abdul Rahman, who have been at this foundation on many occasions with his family and so on. May Allah SWT bless them for taking the drive all the way from Shagawanas to Rijang here. I know it's a challenge drive sometimes. But, Alhamdulillah, Allah reward them and bless them. And I would like to welcome him to give us the real introduction to the topic of inheritance. And inshallah, we'll continue from that point, inshallah. So, Mufti Ar-Rahman.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه وأتباعه الهمات للدين القويم أما بعد. وقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله نبي الكريم. Alhamdulillah, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the opportunity to discuss a topic as important as inheritance. This verse of Quran which I have just read, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that He has perfected a way of life for the mu'mineen, for the believers. and we have heard this verse of Quran many times, I am sure, perfected this way of life for us. But sometimes when we hear this, we think that this perfect way of life is our 5 times daily salat and our hajj and our zakat and our fasting in the month of Ramadan, and that's it. But Islam has many other things other than the 5 pillars of Islam. The 5 pillars of Islam are the basics. That's what we should be doing all the time, anytime, everywhere. And then there is the way of life of a Muslim. A Muslim's entire being is supposed to be controlled within the bounds of Islam. The laws of inheritance, as Maulana Manan was just saying, they are a very important part of a broader set of laws, which is all of the laws that control all of our finances. Zakat is part of that, inheritance is part of that, interest being haram is part of that. The whole system by which we give loans, take repayments, make donations, these are all part of the system of finance in Islam. But sometimes, as Muslims living in a non-Muslim run country, we forget that Islam controls all of that. We forget because we go to the grocery or to the parts place or to the shop, and we get the opportunity to rob the owner of that place by giving them the wrong amount of money, and we take the opportunity to do so as Muslims, which is haram for us. But at that moment in time, we have forgotten that we are a Muslim and that we are supposed to be an honest Muslim wherever we are, even when we are dealing with a non-Muslim businessman or businesswoman. So we are here today to remind ourselves and you the importance given specifically to one part of the finance system of Islam, and that is inheritance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless every single one of us with something, anything, whatever that thing is. The clothes that is on our backs that we own. Let's just start with that alone. We own it. It falls under our ownership. We have been granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However it came into our being, whether someone gave it to us as a gift or we work and we paid for it, we now own it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us that favor of ownership over it. We are a custodian over it for a short time until we die. When we die, we are no longer the owners of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has detailed in the Quran what will be done with whatever we leave after we have gone from this world. And it is our responsibility, just as our responsibility for the clothes on our backs now and the car that we came in here with, it's our responsibility to take care of our wealth and maintain it and do things with it and to it that keeps it going. Is our responsibility to ensure that upon our death, it goes to the rightful heirs. If we do not fulfill that responsibility, we are as guilty as a Muslim who does not pray their 5 times daily salat, who does not give zakat, who Hajj is compulsory upon them and they for no reason or the other decide not to go for Hajj. We are as guilty as that Muslim. We are as guilty as that Muslim who decides to consume alcohol, as reprehensible as the thought might be to us. We are as guilty as that person because we are doing something that is haram. It is haram to not fulfill the rights of our wealth. One of the rights is upon our death to make sure that it goes to the rightful heirs. There are those amongst Muslims who tell themselves, well, I'm not too comfortable with giving daughters half the amount as sons. And this, my dear respected listeners, first of all, is bordering on shirk, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has detailed these laws in the Quran. That is like saying, you know what, I don't believe in that verse now. All the rest of the verse okay with me, but not that one. But that is not good enough. That is just like saying, you know what, I'm okay with praying 4 times daily salat, but 5, that is just one too many. We would not say that. We would not say, you know what, hard alcohol, I'll stay away from that. But a beer once in a while, we would not look upon a Muslim very kindly who says that, would we? It is the same thing here. When we as Muslims do not take care and fulfill the responsibility of that loan that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and whatever we own is really something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lent us. Right? Whether how hard we have worked for it and how we have gotten it, it is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to have, that we take care of for a short time in this world, and after that, it goes to others whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has detailed who it will go to. So my dear respected listeners, in a hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that speaks about inheritance, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, تَعَلَّمُوا الْفَرَائِضَ وَالْقُرْآنَ وَعَلِّمُوا النَّاسَ فَإِنِّي مَقْلُوبٌ. In this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he told his companions and all the believers to come after them to teach the Quran and teach the laws of inheritance, because these are things that we must learn about. And of course, when we learn about them, we are supposed to practice upon them. In this hadith, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brings these two things together: Quran and inheritance. He could have chosen to bring Quran together with Salat or Zakat or Hajj or any one of the other important things. Many times in the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he brings together things to show importance. And we all know how important the Quran is. We teach it to our children and our grandchildren from the time they are able to say, we are teaching them it. We want them to learn to read it. Many of us here will want our children to become a hafid of Quran or a hafidah of Quran. And that importance that we give to Quran is the same importance that we must give to dealing with our estate upon our death. Now it's easy to say, well, you know what? I have grown up my children. I have sent them to learn about Islam, and I expect that they will distribute my inheritance correctly upon my death. So I'm not going to worry about that. No. Your wealth is your responsibility. Would you really want to put your head on a block for any one of your children? I'm not doing that. And I would advise no one else to do it. Because you don't know what will happen amongst your children, your grandchildren, your wives, your brothers and sisters. You don't know who gives what, where, and how. You don't know which one of them will give trouble and decide, you know what? Nobody else can receive from this now. It is your responsibility, our responsibility, whatever we have, to, at a minimum, instruct someone who we trust to carry out Allah's rules upon our death. That is at a minimum. What would be best would be for us to make out and write out a will. The Prophet ﷺ says in one hadith that a Muslim who has anything at all should not pass more than 3 days without having his will written and put aside. 3 days. There are those of you here with gray beards, so you are way past more than 3 days. And I'm sure you have a car or two, a house or two, couple pieces of land, and these are major things. But then you might be thinking to yourself, well, you know, I don't have any house and land. I don't give away all of that. You don't have a bank account. You don't have jewelry. You don't have tools in your garage. You know, Mola, Manana, and myself, we tools is books. So we have tools. Well, nowadays books is coming this But from the days when we used to study, we had books like these, right? But this is a gardening area, this Barapo area. I'm sure some of you all might have, what is called the thing that is pulled behind the tractor, and is a brush cutter, a plow, a rotavator. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, you know, you retired from gardening and you forget that you have it. You die. This is just a scenario. You retired from gardening, you say to yourself, well, you know what, I'm just going to be praying all night salat in the masjid from now onwards. You become a muttaqi. You die, and this muttaqi who just went into the ground, his entire family is now fighting over his rotavator. Who will get it? Who will get his John Deere? His entire family is destroyed because he didn't tell them, or he or she didn't detail for them and make sure that they knew that that 1 acre of land that he used to garden on for his entire life, he paid for all their education with that 1 acre land. And today they are now fighting over that 1 acre of land. My dear respected listeners, this is real. So real that you would not believe the kind of things that I have seen personally. I'll give you one, just one. This will make you cry. If it doesn't make you cry, it will make you make sure that your will is done. I sat one time with Imam Shiraz from the Islam Masjid to assist in a mediation between a son and his mother. His mother at that time was 86 years old. And he, you can imagine his age is 60, decided to put his mother out of the house. You understand this? An 86-year-old woman had to find a place to live. She son is not a teenager, you know, man. This is not a whim and a fancy of a young person. This is a 60-odd-year man. He have great-grandchildren. And he's putting his mother out of the house in which she lives. And this is happening, of course, everything is in the hands of Allah. This is happening simply because his father didn't put things in place before he died. His father did not have a detailed instructions about what to do with his inheritance and his estate upon his death. If father had to answer for that, he had to, of course, answer for the way he treated his mother. But my dear respected listeners, this could have been avoided if, before that person's death, they had a will in place that instructed what will take place with their estate. So without going too much into too many details, today's program is about the importance of Islamic inheritance and making sure that every one of us puts in place a will or some other instructions to make sure that upon our death, our estate, which is whatever we leave, is not used for haram activities. And haram activities means it goes to the wrong people. It is used for haram activities like drugs and alcohol. And it also, haram activities also means it does not go to the rightful heirs of that estate. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from the corruption of wealth. May He make us from amongst those who fulfill the responsibilities of our wealth, whatever that wealth is. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah, Mufti Abdul Rahman, for that introduction. I'm sure what it did is just simply give us an enlightenment as to what it means to start off by recognizing where we are when it comes to our wealth. You know, I just want to throw that question amongst us here right now, just to tease our attention and our understanding of when it comes to this particular program. But before I do that, I'd like to welcome the visiting ulama from the ulama graduates of Darul Uloom, and also welcome Maulana Umar Sean at the head table here as well. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them through the journey, traffic. Masha. You know, when someone dies, when a man dies, who takes care of his funeral? his wealth, if he has wealth at that point in time? What about his wife? If his wife dies, does her wealth take care of her funeral, or is it that the husband's wealth take care of her funeral, or janazah rights and so on, to take care of the funeral and burial and stuff? I want you to bear that question in mind, because that's something pertinent to our topic, and I would like, I know more, Omar now just dropped in, but I want him to do his little introduction before we do some questioning, inshallah. Welcome.
السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح. First, I would like to apologize for being late. There was traffic, and the fact that we had to stop the bring over it caused a little delay. But despite that, inshallah, I would just like to, mention one of the important things that is very important. Many a times as Muslims, we make preparation for our livelihood. So many of us, while it is we are alive, we will take out, or we will have what is known as a debt. We will take loans, whether it be from individuals, we will take loans, whether it be from institutions. And this is something that is common amongst many people. But what is more common and frightening is the fact that on our debt, many of us do not pay our debts. And in recent times we have seen, along with, even though it is inheritance, it is connected. Because many a times when people die, one of the things that we have seen is that people do not leave instructions, as Mufti Abdul Rahman was mentioning, about leaving an instruction as to paying off their debt. As we know, when a person dies, the first thing that should be taken care of before even burying and shrouding is that of his debt. A person who dies, he leaves a debt, he owes people, then there is no instructions. And this is very, very important. As the Prophet ﷺ says, everything is forgiven except in a person's debt, owing people. And sometimes we think to ourselves, well, it is not much. Despite how much it is, we should leave instructions along with that. Instructing our family members, if I die, these are the people I owe. Sometimes it can be a simple thing as writing on a piece of paper. Our spouses should know, whether it is our wives or our husbands, they should know that this, on my debt, this is who I'm owing, and it should be paid off. Right? So, before we even think about, the inheritance as it is done, the debt should be paid off. That is the first thing. And if it is, let's say, for example, the debt is paid off, and the person has no money, then that responsibility of shrouding and burying would be upon the relatives, his immediately or his inheritors, his close family members. And if this cannot be done, then it will fall on the responsibility of the Muslim community. Right? Another aspect that I would like to mention before we go into it is, many a times while we are on our deathbed, many a times one of the things we say is that I have so and so, give this to so and so, give this to the masjid, or give this to the Darul Uloom, or give this to the institution. It sounds good, but one of the things that we must remember is that you cannot will more than a third of your wealth. Right? So this is very important. And why do I say that? Is that sometimes a man is on his dying bed and he wants to get blessings. For his whole life, maybe he didn't give any charity to organizations, and they say, give all of this to this and give all of this, and forgetting the rights of the heirs upon him. Now we must
that must be paid off. And usually, nowadays, in our society, most institutions, even our Muslims, we are involved in the environment where we deal with banks. Right? And banks, we don't borrow $10 and $20 like long ago. If you have to buy a house or build a house, it doesn't cost you anything less than $500,000. And if you have to buy a car, it doesn't cost, if you buy something new, more than or less than $500,000 or a few $100,000. Right? All of these things now, the banks design a system which is called what? You have a life policy on these insurance that you actually cover the cost of the item. Right? Now, all of these things are technicalities within our having to deal with loans, getting loans paid off, and whether these systems that we involve ourselves in is such as an important part of understanding whether these things will benefit us if we were to die of a sudden and the condition remains like this. And in bearing that in mind, we are so scrupulous, so particular about the method of our salah, ensuring that it is done on time. All the other ibadat is done on time. What about the most important thing that on the day of judgment, you see those personal things that our ibadat, the huququllah, those things we will be at the mercy of Allah. But when it comes to the wealth that we share, our responsibility to our families with it, and as well our disbursement and receipt of it, those wealths are directly related now to people. And therefore, on the day of judgment, people want their what? Benefit that they were deprived of in this world because of us. Because of us not doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do to our wealth. And sometimes that knowledge of understanding how that wealth, you see, having it is one thing, but utilizing it is also important. And that's why on judgment day, parents and children will be running from each other, because there's a reason for it. There's a reason for that. And it's not just because they talk some bad words, but because there are hukuk and rights that may be binding upon each other that was not fulfilled. And the conditions for these things must be set right before us here. So our wealth is one of the things that is such a danger for us. Just like our limbs. On the day of Qiyamah, what happens to our limbs? Al-yawma nakhtimu ala afwahihim wa tukallimuna aydihim wa tashhadu arjuluhum ma kanu yaksibun. That our limbs will speak of the actions that it has done. Our wealth is of a similar nature. Our wealth. Because it has its haqq and its right too. Because it comes from Allah, and Allah is mirath for samawati wal ard. And therefore that haqq and right of the wealth will also speak if it was what? Done in a proper and utilized in a proper manner by us. The knowledge of inheritance is not only upon preparing a will, as you know, but the knowledge of inheritance is also understanding when there are circumstances and challenges whilst we are alive in relationships, for example. I have dealt with some cases myself, and I'll tell you, there are families who have Muslim and non-Muslim children, and there are families whose parents are Muslim and non-Muslims. And these are things that we want to shed some light in. But if you have questions, before we answer these questions, it will be nice. So anybody with a question or that share something, you can stand and say it if you want.
I have a question, since nobody have any question. Anybody, just by a show of hands, anybody ever borrow a tool from anybody who don't know? By a show of hands? Or borrow a fishing tackle, or borrow a vehicle, or borrow anything. This is just like what Mullah Shaw and Mullah Manan is saying. We have took a loan and have to be repaid. Whatever we have on the lady side, I'm sure somebody borrow a bowl or a plate or a osterizer. It's still called an osterizer. A ninja, whatever these things. Everything that we have borrowed, this is an amanat and a trust, just like our wealth is an amanat and a trust. If you borrow something from someone and then you die and you do not return it to them, maybe you did not return it because you forgot you had it. Maybe you did not return it because you were still using it. Just imagine that your family thinks that that thing which you have borrowed is yours, and they don't return it either. One man was just saying, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ. On that day when everybody will be running from everybody else, somebody will be coming for you to collect back the shovel. On that day, if you don't have any shovel, you have to pay an accepted salat. You have to pay an accepted zakat. You have to pay an accepted hajj. Accepted charity. We don't even know which one of our charity is accepted. Man is saying that on that day we are at the mercy of our Creator Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we do not know even if any of our salat was accepted. And where we are to pay with on that day? Accepted salat. We even know if any of them accepted.
MashaAllah. Maulana, we have Imam Alimuddin. Welcome.
And the question is, if father died, he left his wife and 2 girl children, how his estate will be distributed?
So the father dies, not the husband and wife don't want here, right? Father dies and left the wife and 2 children.
Yeah.
Okay.
And 2 girl children.
2 girl children. Only fractions, I just want to know how to work out first.
Yeah,
Okay, so you get the fractions, but just to bear in mind that we look at, before considering a case, you know, more should already help me here, but I'll just do the first part of it, inshallah. Before we consider a case, we have to consider the relationship of how our inheritance case is done after we do the calculations. And that is, we look at the closest in relationship, the blood ties. So before you even consider further brother, sister, uncle, aunt, cousin, and nephew, as the Imam said, he left knowing that the first people to receive any wealth will be what? Husband or wife, children, and then if they're not in the picture, then anybody else. So Mufti Rahman will give you the answer now, inshallah.
So Imam Sahib, I would normally ask that, before I would talk the case, I would normally ask, how come a person die and they don't have any brothers and sisters? You said they are survived by only the wife and 2 daughters.
No, but I know about the inheritance and brothers, how it comes down the line. But for the general membership here.
Okay, so assuming that a person dies and they really only have a wife and 2 daughters, then the wife would receive 1/8 because they have children. If they did not have children, she would receive 1/4, and the 2 daughters would receive 2/3 of the estate. We would have to look for someone to receive the remainder of the estate, right? And there's where I was asking if the person had any brothers or sisters or maybe parents and that kind of thing. But that's a longer discussion. As I said, we would normally interview that person, find out about the other families that they have, because you might be thinking to yourself, it's just only your spouse and children have to inherit, but there may be other inheritors. And we would normally want to know who they are, all of them. Right? But if it is really only just the wife and 2 daughters, then the wife will receive 1/8 and the daughters will receive 2/3 of the estate. So, yes?
Is it what we call stepchildren? Are they entitled to any inheritance?
Right, so when we look at stepchildren, there is no actual connection through blood, as Mufti Abdul Rahman mentioned. So therefore, stepchildren will not be considered as a part of inheritance. However, you can make for them a will. You can do a separate will for them. You follow it, so that they can get benefit from the estate, as the case may be. Right? But there is no portion for them because they're not related by blood directly.
I would ask a question is, what's the stepchildren according to you?
Well, my interpretation of a stepchild is most people marry, but before marriage, either the male had a child with someone else or the female had a child with someone else.
Right, so bear in mind that, as the brother is saying, two people got married, and let's say each of them had children. Then the male of that marriage would consider the wife's children his stepchildren, and the female of the marriage would consider the husband's children as her stepchildren. But they are someone's real children, aren't they? Right? So they will inherit from their real parents. And even though a person becomes divorced, so in that case, let's say the person became divorced and that's why they remarried. They didn't divorce the father. They have a real father still. Or in the case of the man, the children didn't divorce their mother. They have a real mother still. And they will inherit from that person. Even though their parents are not married, that person who is their father or mother will still remain as their father and mother throughout their entire life until the day of judgment. Right? So I agree with Mohan Sean that a person could do a will to facilitate those stepchildren, but at the same time, those children do still have real parents, and they will inherit from those real parents as well, inshallah.
As well as, sometimes these are all local Muslims and families function otherwise, right? And this is to say that if the mother and father breaks up or separate, as the case will see, sometimes the mother or the father who has custodian over the children at times put some kind of wedge, as we will say, or kind of separation that we're done with you and we want to hear about you, we want to hear nothing, we want to see you all at all. And me I want from you again and I want from you and the other. And the children also go with the same idea that we want no connection and nothing from you, keep everything that you have. Right? So these situations do arise at times where when you cut ties, like that kind of cutting ties is a very dangerous thing, because there's a thing called Judgment Day and about cutting ties and about the paradise as well. So as Muslims, consciousness has to be about that. And consciousness about the wealth as well, that what is the one who are the real rightful owners of the wealth, as Mufti Ar-Rahman is saying, when that person dies and he has rightful heirs, the children who are there, who supposed to collect this wealth, does not, take the, not as an advantage, but take the rightful ownership of it. They also have a responsibility towards that father or mother, as the case would be, if there were debts and loans as well and other issues that they should supposed to have done in order to secure their entry into paradise as well. So sometimes consideration has to be taken on either side, even with the wealth.
But, why is it talking, it come to mind that you said that they have parents, right?
Maybe send enough here so they want to hear the question so that they can hear the answer as well.
So they have parents, but remember, on the father's side, if the father has to distribute his blood, they are blood to the father. On the mother's side, they are also blood to the mother. So, if a distribution has to take place, would the mother share, right? Would the mother be able to distribute her share to her children? And similarly, the father, would he, I don't know how that would, well, I'm just asking, would that be able to be done?
Okay, so inheritance can become a little technical and confusing. So let me just make it simple. If it is, as Maulana Manan mentioned, if we have a relationship where two persons would have had children from a previous marriage, husband and a man and a woman, and now they are married. In the event that one of them dies, whether it's the wife or the husband, they will have heirs, meaning that the woman, she will have her heirs, Can happen also the instance where, for example, both men and women will have children now from this present marriage. Now, yes, they would have inherited, right? They will become one of the heirs. But in the event that, let's say, for example, the woman died, she will have heirs from the previous marriage, not your children, not the man's children. So the man's children will not become heirs on her death. And in a similar case, if the man dies now, his children and the children of that present marriage will become heirs, not her children. You understand, right? And I think that's as simple as it can get, inshallah. Now, in addition to so that we can clear the air, many a times, sometimes we have relationships like these, whereby a man may marry a woman, but from a previous marriage, maybe he was a non-Muslim, or the children are not Muslim, they left Islam. One thing that we must understand is that a Muslim cannot inherit from a non-Muslim. And a non-Muslim cannot inherit from a Muslim. That is something a principle that we must keep in mind. However, we can give them like a will, we can do a will for them, but they cannot inherit, they cannot become one of the inheritors. So, in saying the same situation, let's say for example, the husband passed away, but he have children who are not Muslim, or they are apostate, they left Islam, they will not become heirs in his estate. Right? I hope that cleared it up a little.
But if he leaves a will,
if he leave, right, he can leave a will for them. Yes, he can leave a will, and it cannot exceed a third of his estate. Right? I think that is as simple as it.
MashaAllah. Yeah. More questions? So we have more questions. MashaAllah.
So we have other questions coming, right? So this one is, if it is a husband and a wife has a joint account in the bank, and the money that is between them is not any specific amount. They share the same, they have equal access to the full amount. And one dies. What is the situation with that? And well, something similar to that as well. If somebody purchases, a husband and wife purchases something, and one dies, how do they deal? Yeah, let's say both purchase something together. How do they deal with it?
This is a very nice question. Yes. I have worked on many cases where the husband and wife is sitting in front of me, and they said this exact thing that Sherwin is saying, that we have a joint account, and we have access to it equally. We can spend any amount we want. My question would be, is whose money is it? It can't be nobody's money. It had to be somebody one, right? And then they will say, well, no, it's two what we want. We spend from it as we see fit, as we see it. And say, oh, okay. So watch the woman and I'll say, so when your husband has a second wife, she will be spending from that too. The room is getting quiet immediately. I'll watch the man and say, so two of you decide to get divorced. How much she gain? Half, quarter, none, all, because you say you can spend any amount you want from it, right? So that means to say all is my one, and all is she want too. The maths of that don't work out. There must be a line. So that question about saying there is a joint account and is nobody one, because that is what you're saying. When you say is everybody one, you're also saying is nobody one. And answer either one of those questions. Your husband decided to get an ex-wife, or two more, or three more. So you have four now. All four of his wife will have access to that account. You know the answer to that. She's going to say, no, that was always all my money. Yeah? So in answer to Sherwin's question, how you're dealing with it in inheritance is how you should have dealt with it in the beginning. When you open the account, you should have said, listen, my darling wife, this is all your money. I will just use from it sometimes to buy some fish and tacos. Of course, no man want to do that. So where's the other side of it? My darling wife, this is not your money. It's all mine. You can spend from it however you want, however. Make groceries and Pennywise and Super Farm and whatever else you want to buy for the house. But you see, when you decide to start paying your brother rent, I have a problem with that. So, does she really have access to it? Is it really hers? Because if it was hers, she could have paid your brother rent. Yeah, but you know, he's a drug addict. I know why you're paying him rent, but that's my brother. So, in answer to your question, normally if I deal with a couple like that, the amount of questions I'm going to ask them and scenarios that I will put forward to them, at the end of the meeting, they're going to say, you know what, we need to come back by you, Mufti sir. We really don't know who money that is. And that is because it didn't start off correct in the first place. It should have started off correct. You can have a joint account, yes, but whose money is it? Is it 50-50, 60-40? Place a number. Whatever that number is, that is the number that when you come by your alim to work out the inheritance, he can work it out for you. And that goes for the house. I remember my own parents, when they were talking about doing their will, my mom and dad sitting right there and telling her, well, it's two of the house. I say, it's two of the house? Okay. So when we sell the house, how is splitting up the money? My mom said, well, all the money is my one. My dad said, all the money is he want too. So yeah, you need to have a percentage. It can't simply, and bear in mind, that's how deeds are made up in Trinidad. There is normally no percentage in a joint tenancy. You can have 5 names in it. It's not 1/20 per person. It's just names. But we as Muslims must know what we own at all times so that we can distribute what we own. If we don't know what we own, how are we going to distribute it? And worse yet, if we die and we didn't know what we own, Sean, how the inheritors going to know what we own? Sean and I are working on a case right now. The inheritors don't know what the guy who died owned. Every few months, they meet with me and Sean, and they'll say, oh, we find this extra deed here. Include that in inheritance to them. A year goes by, and they come back. We find a new rotavator under the tree. So what we gonna do with that? They're asking Sean and I. We say, so who own it? We them don't know who own it. They don't know if the person who passed away own it, or one of his brother own it, or one of the children already own it and they don't know. That is a reality. So luckily we are here today, so you all could hear that and say to yourselves, well, you know what, I should make a list of everything that I own. Every time I sell something, scratch it out on the list. Every time I get something new, add it to the list. Now you might be thinking to yourself, that is a tedious thing, but that is part of management of your wealth. If you don't know what you own, how can you distribute it? You might think that you have took care of your entire estate, and on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you, want this piece of land here, you forget about it? Your family fight over it, and all your sons, na'uzubillah, they no longer talk to each other, and your daughters, well, then they get none from it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from that.
Ameen, inshallah. Showing any more?
Yeah. Should we only asking real hard questions?
As I said in the beginning, it's a very interesting topic, so a lot of questions coming. So this question is about a sister who received the benefit of a life insurance after her spouse died. The money was used to purchase a house, and she's considering what is considered if this funds is haram. And if so, how does it make amends with money from her life insurance?
Voilà.
You watch me, I answer the question.
I think to answer all the questions, but we have some young muftis and alims in the crowd here too, you know. And if anyone want to answer, any young alims want to answer? Siddiq, you want to answer?
I see him again.
Doing some fatwa now.
Maulana Sadiq,
Come here, get the question. Come forward, inshallah.
Let's see the answer now.
note as well, our next similar question, well, this one is about a piece of land that is joint with a husband and wife. The husband wants to give part of the land.
The next one.
No, the next one, to somebody. And the wife doesn't want to do it, so he wants to know what he should do.
So, Maulana Siddiq.
You want to know what you should do?
So the question is basically what Shoaib was mentioning is the woman earns wealth from her deceased husband, which is a life insurance policy. So from a life insurance policy, she purchased a house from that, and from that house, she wants to know if that house is halal or haram or what she should do with it. Run it again one more time. She bought a house from a life insurance policy that her husband had took out. Life insurance, you're paying an amount of money every month going on till you die. When you die, you earn X amount of money from an insurance company. That X amount of money, she take that money and bought a house with it. For her, I guess for her and her children or whatever it may be. But is that halal or haram?
So her husband passed away and she inherited his haram life insurance policy. She buy a house. She buy a house with the haram money that she inherited from she haram life insurance policy. Now she is asking what to do with that house. How to make amends for spending haram money and living in a haram house. With the children, feeding them food in a haram house every night, every day. So you answer.
How you answer that question? You don't know more? And you come just know that.
I'm sure say you
No,
handle
I'm
it.
not sure you handle it. Hold on, it's don't leave it.
Now,
Well, I don't know.
listen. Now, we may look at this as something funny, but wealth is something that we will all be answerable for. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that a man will not be able to move a foot until he has answered 5 questions. How did you spend your youth? How did you spend your life? How you acted upon the knowledge that you acquired? How did you gain your wealth and how did you spend it? And we must understand that anything that is connected with insurance, especially life insurance, and we know the evil that is behind life insurance. It is haram, clear-cut haram. Okay, mashallah, a person may not have known. They took the money, they purchased a house. They would have made error. They would have error in their judgment, maybe lack of knowledge, and Allah knows this. But now that knowledge has reached us, we have to act accordingly. So as Muslims, we should not involve ourselves in life insurance, because that's a whole different topic by itself. However, in answering the question that the sister asked, this may be your only source of income. This may be the only means by which you can provide a shelter for your family. That is between now you and your Allah. So my advice is that you make tawbah to Allah, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive your husband because of the fact that doing something like this in reality, it is not an easy thing. Right? It is a form of ill-gotten wealth. So my advice to you is that it has already been done. If it is that maybe you have 10 homes and you can afford them, give it in some, or give it to me. But if it is your only home and the only means of providing for your family, then you make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Seek the forgiveness for yourself and also for your husband, inshallah. Allah knows this.
MashaAllah. And I ought to add something interesting to this. Because see, sometimes questions do come to our iftar department and to the general area. generally, what happens is that many questions come, and one of the questions that is frequently asked at times is, the iftar department get is, at what time in your life, a person has real challenges and difficulties in life, and I really want to own a home and I can't get a home except through a bank, a loan, right? And you have to go through a system of what? Interest, and also have a life insured policy to ensure that if you die, that as I mentioned before, that question to cover the debt that your family may not be able to pay off. And what the bank uses as a trick to take you to it is that your family don't have to stress over paying this debt anymore. Once you die, this insurance covers this loan and everything is taken care of. That position comes to many times before us and the institution, the Darul, and even out here and from many places, questions will come to us. And it's interesting that when you hear these scenarios and situations, we have to really consider ourselves today that when the Prophet Sallallahu told us about the time will come when you will never be able to escape riba or interest, and far less the debt that sometimes we find ourselves in. So Maulana Umar has mentioned, make tawbah is one thing. Very important to do that, because sometimes in a case of necessities, certain things are allowed, and to the extent it's only on an individual basis. And no one here is for us to say, well, do it out of necessity, because if we do that, then what will happen? Everybody goes under what? Takes loans. But it's not for us to judge, it's still the individual decision to do that. Not even the best fatwa wanted to make it halal, haram. That haram, make it halal. So yes, I don't know if they're wrong to answer that.
Just before Sean says the next question, I'd just like to add that we set standards in our lives for ourselves and our children, our loved ones. And sometimes we set those standards, like Mona saying that you have to take a loan to get a house. We sometimes set these standards arbitrarily without looking to the lives of the prophets and the companions salam. And one hadith comes to mind, which a companion passed away, and his estate was one piece of cloth that when it covered his head, his feet were exposed. And when it covered his feet, his head was exposed. He wasn't talking about he had a house and a camel and 300 sheep, That is the only thing that he owned. But he didn't have any debts to pay off. And well, of course, he was a companion. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept him, radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. But what is our standard? He had one piece of clothing upon his debt. He don't have really much to answer for. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy and forgive him. But that was his standard by which he lived. What is our standard? What do we really need? Do we really need a house? Or we just need a place to live? So do we really need to take a $1.5 million loan and pay back $3 million to the bank in 20 years? Do we really need that? Or do we really just want that? Is that our standard? Is that the standard that we need to live by? So that is the question that we have to answer. I did not wish to belittle the sister's question, but the reality is, her husband in trouble right now. He passed away. He did a haram transaction and then passed away. And he did not get the opportunity to fix that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon him. We here, alhamdulillah, here today, learning this and trying to live our lives and make decisions financially as part of Islam. And this is something hopefully we can go forward with. Sure.
So the next question is, if it is you have children or a child is a Muslim, but he's not on the correct path, he's involved in all kind of illegal activities or illicit things, will he still be entitled to inherit from him? That's one part, right? And the other part is, if a mother says that she gives one of her son a piece of land and belongs to her, but it so happens that she comes and dies, will the other children be entitled to part of her property? Or, because remember we say 1/3 you could give while you're alive. But this one is a whole piece of land that she would give to her child while she was living, but then she died. And the property did not go to her son as yet. You guys no answer, you can answer now.
Just one thing before we answer the question. I just want to clear up because I've already mentioned something there. The 1/3 you could give before you die. That 1/3, when we say you could give, is that you can will it to those who are not inheritors. Understand that clearly. I want that to be understood. That 1/3 that you can give will from your estate is not for the inheritors. Understand that, right? Right, so what I'm saying here is that you cannot will 1/3 to the heirs, those who can inherit from you. Who will receive that? You can will you can will only 1/3, you can't will more than that to those who cannot inherit. Right? Now in mentioning that also, those people who while you're alive, you can give them. Give. That is theirs. I just want to make that clear. So if it is, let's say for example, while I'm alive, I have a son and I say, listen, this is yours, it is his. I can be the custodian of it, but once I say this is yours, it is his, that will not be a part of his estate. That will not be a part of my estate or my debt. So that will not be included in the estate. That will be separate because I have given it to him. It is his property. I hope that makes clear because I think based on the question, it seems as though we are confusing. When something is given while a person is alive, that is his. It is his property. I can't be the custodian of it. So let's say, for example, my 80-year-old son, right? He's immature. I give him a piece of land. And I say, listen, this is yours. Maybe I put both of our names on the property because I don't want him to just go and pick it up and sell it. But I say, this is yours. And just to protect him and be the custodian of it, I put both of our names on the deed. That is his. On my death, the other children cannot come and say, this has to become a part of my estate. No, it will not be included. That is his property. I just want to make those things clear.
If you couldn't hear it.
So the second question was already answered.
You just think that we want some.
If he could inherit. So with regards to the factors which prevent an individual from inheriting, the first of them being that if the individual he is a non-Muslim, it prevents him from inheriting, but the father died as a Muslim. Hence, the son, he is still a Muslim, so he can inherit. Doesn't matter what he is doing, illicit or illegal activities, he's still a Muslim, so that doesn't prevent him from inheriting.
MashaAllah. So that's exactly the case. If you
So
have
just wanted to add to Siddiq's answer is that although you might say that yes, the person will inherit, but in Islam we can, and this is why we should have an estate plan. An estate plan helps us to plan what will take place with our inheritance. So in the case that Nauzubillah, a person have a wayward child, how they will take care of that child. This person is everybody today easily could become a millionaire. Land 20 years ago that was worth $10,000 for 10 acres of land. Over the last decade, that land is now worth millions of dollars. So you're thinking to yourself, I given this to this boy, he just go down and smoke it out. What will you do? You don't want to give it to him, but at the same time you want to be a good Muslim and make sure he inherits, he or she, because you can have a wayward daughter too, he or she inherits what they are supposed to inherit. So you can't put someone who will take care of it for them, who will help them to manage it. It will be a trust. That person, of course, that'll be somebody who you trust. Don't trust me and man, because we will just take all of it and put it in the room and back all our foundation.
You make sure you get invested for the hereafter.
Yeah, we will just really take care of the hereafter and he won't have nothing to eat here. But the point is, you can't put someone to take care of it on their behalf. You have to detail this. It has to be in a written document. This will not happen on its own. If you don't do anything, what will happen is exactly what you thought, which is that he will sell his 1 acre land for $5 million, and in 2 years' time, if so far, he will have nothing.
MashaAllah. So my dear brothers and sisters, we may have more questions, but we have limited time. We 10 to 8, we'll just go for 15 minutes again if it's okay with everybody.
I thought
And then pressure.
I thought you said we were going to 10.
10.
Was 10 to 8, you say? Oh,
So we'll give out 15 minutes again if it's okay with everybody, just to hold on this train. And then after we preach us out. Everybody okay with that, inshallah? So we just have a lot more questions again. Anybody have anything to clarify?
The one question that Shubha was asking about.
Then come on the mic, come on the mic.
But I was asking if it is the agreement that you make to give somebody something, if it is a verbal agreement, will it stand, or if it is you need a written agreement?
Sir?
You give somebody something verbally.
And no paperwork for it.
Wasn't done legally or unwritten will waiting.
Yes, I have witnesses, right? Any witnesses?
Would have more.
Witnesses?
Right.
You have
so-
witnesses by chance? In the whole question?
But it is to the
Okay.
Alright, so one of the things is that whether it is written or it is verbal, it will stand. Once you have given something, it will stand. But our experience have shown otherwise. What is that? Sometimes verbally you say, son, this bottle of water is yours. When you get old, maybe the son show you a different face. You take it from this son and you say, daughter, this bottle of water is yours. When time of death, they're fighting each other. Who owns it is? That is one problem. The next problem that comes about is sometimes you told the son, nobody was there, son, this is yours. The son taking care of it, treating it as is his. On your death now, everybody come and say, we never hear dad say anything like that. Problems. So this is why, and I think Mufti Abdul Rahman would have mentioned that initially, a simple thing like writing it down, or making it known to everyone. Because as he mentioned, we were dealing with a case that in order for us to find out if this belonged to the deceased, we had to call about 10 people to verify who owned it is. So in order to make things easy, a simple writing it down or call everybody that listen, I am giving this to so-and-so. And nobody can hold you to task if you give that to your son or if you give that to your daughter. Because at the time when you're alive, you can give at will. But once you die, then the law of inheritance will take effect. You follow me? So if it is you give a son, you have 2 lots of land. You give a son 1 lot, maybe because the others may be living under your house, under your care. And you have an extra lot of land and you give it to one son, but the other children, maybe they're not of age, maybe they're still living with you as the case may be. On your death, that lot of land that you have given to your son would not be a part of the estate. What will be of the estate now is the land that you have where you live in. That is the property. Yeah.
MashaAllah.
Right?
You know, interestingly, Maulana mentions that I remember a few years ago I dealt with that case. But this case, all the children come with a will. Different will. At different times they were prepared. So we don't know which is the first and the last and which was the real thing that was really amongst the 5 or 6 children were there. So they put me in a situation to read wills and to check out dates and, you know, subhanallah, that was a case by itself. Interesting. You know, so how it comes now about that you have to actually deal with that case like that, you know, subhanallah, you'll be amazed at the kind of things you would hear when you come to these type of situations. And what about the accountability amongst the children and how they will deal with this particular situation. And I'm sure Mufti Abraham Kar, you know about those type of things as well, I'm sure about that. But you have some more questions, and I don't want to dwell too much on that, but just add to how the situation is.
So one more question comes. A man on his dying bed, can he give all his wealth to one out of his 5 children at that time? So this is 2 things here, two questions really. First is, can a person give all of their wealth to one of their inheritors? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already detailed what a person must do with their inheritance. And it is not given it to one person. So then I would be asking, is this person talking about while they are alive, they want to give all of their wealth to one child? And the answer to that also too is, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam advises us in a hadith that when we are giving to our children, we should give them equally, so that we will not create enmity amongst them, so that we will spread the wealth, right? And the last part of that question is on your deathbed. So there is a rule in inheritance, which is that the sickness that a person dies from the moment the person becomes sick with that sickness, they are no longer allowed to give away their wealth. So let's say, for example, a person, you know, get a stroke or a heart attack. That is the beginning of their death. It might have taken a few hours or a few days, or maybe even sometimes a few weeks. Now, of course, people do recover from that, but we're talking about a person who gets a heart attack, they are in the hospital, and, you know, the doctors tell you, well, you know, they're all looking good. It's time for the family to start visiting and making arrangements. At that time, a person can't be given away and making changes to their will and their estate, and it's not advisable, and it's against the rules of inheritance. This is called the sickness of death, maradul maut. When a person reaches to that stage, they are not allowed to make changes anymore. And Mufti Sahib here, he will do the next question. Pass the microphone back there. He just said he's feeling cold. You need to eat some more so you get a little rounder like me and man. You read the question.
So the question is, if I borrow from someone and after some time I now choose to give him back, but I can't find him, what will I do in this case? Well, firstly, with regards to when borrowing things from an individual, a contract known as kitabu ayara, borrowing, then we should try, just as advice, not to keep it to an overextended period or for such a long time that when time to give it back, we can't find the individual. But as for if we cannot find the individual when time to return it, then somebody else should answer that question.
You know, if you borrow an item, right, and you don't have the owner, you can't find the owner, right, to give it back to, right, then it is still an amanat, a trust. It didn't move away from being a trust upon that individual. So therefore, he cannot own a trust. It can be given in some other way to a place or institution maybe where he can actually secure it for the general well-being, where you can find it like that. As well as, because I'll give you some more advice on that too as well.
Yeah. I can't remember if this is a hadith. There is this incident which I have heard of where a person had a trust with someone, and it was sheep, animals. And they did a transaction, so he left it with him, supposed to come back for it. Years pass, he come back to collect his sheep, his one sheep. And so the person who he come back to, he say, well, I come from a sheep. He tell the person, I come from a sheep. He say, yes, well, all of this here is yours. The hundreds of animals there now. He say, well, I leave one sheep with you. I just bought the one sheep. He say, well, you didn't come back. It was here, and this is where it turned to now. So now all of that is yours. Anybody here, by a show of hands, know any Muslim nowadays who that honest? Walk down my hand because I didn't want to think that my hand was up. So we be thinking that, you know, it was just a hammer the person borrowed, or it was just in the case of ladies, a hijab pin. That thing is lost. It's so small. It's insignificant. But for some person, that hijab pin was important, and it was not returned. Right? We as Muslims must understand that wealth is a very serious matter in our deen. Whatever we own is a very serious matter in deen. Whether it be a pin or 100 sheep, it is a very serious matter. Taking a loan without interest, making sure it is paid back on time to the person who it was taken from. Very serious matters. You see, Muhammad said, the hadith of the Rasul says that a person's judgment is held. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ refused to perform the janazah salah of a companion because he was owing somebody some money. The person who he refused to perform janazah for was a companion. That is not weekend people, no. Allah says in the Quran about the companions, radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. He is pleased with them and they are pleased with him. And the Prophet ﷺ said, one of the preachers said that. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu said, hey, I will take responsibility to pay he debts. And then the Prophet ﷺ prayed. He was walking off. Today we make light of these things. And we worry greatly about making sure that we perform our salah correctly, as Muhammad was saying, making sure that we perform our hajj or pay our zakat, but we forget about these other aspects of our deen, like our finances, and they cannot be forgotten because they are intertwined with every single thing else in our lives.
MashaAllah. So my dear brothers and sisters, we are to the end. I know we will have questions available, and I'm sure there are more questions we're going to ask. And I would like to give the panelists who are here with us an opportunity to, in a couple of minutes, 2 minutes at least, to give their closing remarks and also any type of advice they want to share with us here this evening before we close off, inshallah.
Okay, so one is we spoke about debt, fulfilling the debt. And there's a narration mentioned by Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. A person, he complained to Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he's been, overpowered by debt. He was a makatib, he was a slave. And it seemed as though the incident was where he had purchased his freedom, but he was owing. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu told him that even if it is you have a great amount of debt, then recite this dua. And inshallah, by reciting this dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove that debt even if it may be after some time. So inshallah, sometimes many of us, we have debt So inshallah we can recite this dua and you can recite after me. Allahumma kfini
اللهم اكفني
بحلالك
بحلالك
عن حرامك
عن حرامك
وفضلك
وفضلك
عمن سواك.
عمن سواك.
Right? This is a dua that you can learn inshallah. Allahumma kfini bihalalik an haramik wa aghnini bifadlika amman siwak. It's very simple dua. Constantly after all salah we can recite this dua. The other thing before we close is that many a times as parents, you know, we have love for our children, and this is natural. We have love for our children. But one of the things that I would advise is that put things in place so that in the closing of our eyes, because none of us know when we will die. And I will give you an example with myself. My wife, she knows that if I die, what to do. I have mentioned, give her instructions that if I'm going down the road tonight and something happened to me, she already knows what to do. So put things in place. It can be a simple notebook that on my debt, I owe so and so and so, that this should be sold and this money should be paid. However, as parents, what I would advise is that do not deprive our children of what is rightfully theirs. Because many times we do that. So our favorite son and our favorite daughters, we sometimes do a will, which is according to Islam, but in reality it is a haram will. What do I mean by this? We will say, well, we will go to somebody and ask, well, how can I do a will? I want to do a will. And we give the favorite son and the favorite daughter the best of everything, and then we leave nothing for the other children. Now, if it is we are doing it, I would advise you to do it the correct way and fear Allah in your children. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakumullah khair. We'll now ask Mawlana Siddiq Walid Mufti, inshallah, to one more question, just now with the question. Then you can first. One more question, subhanAllah.
The knowledge of fara'id, the knowledge of mirath, is something that many people we don't know about or we don't usually show importance to. It is something that is hardly spoken about. But to show the importance of this ilm and the significance of it, in a hadith it comes that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, تَعَلَّمُ النَّاسِ عِلْمُ الْفَرَائِضِ, to teach the people about ilm al-fara'id, the ilm of mirath, because it is nisful ilm and half of ilm, or kama qala alayhi salatu wassalam. So much significance the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he showed the knowledge of mirath, that he compared it and he referred to it as it being half of ilm, half of knowledge. So much ilm, so much knowledge about so much things there are. But the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he referred to it as being half of ilm. Yet still it is something that we very seldomly hear about. So the initiative that was taken for those who organized such a gathering it's very commendable, because it's something that we need to hear about more often. And as one of the commentaries given on this hadith is that why is it referred to as half of ilm, is that everything else, every other type of knowledge that we learn, everything else we learn about, it is connected to life, matters of this world and matters of the dunya. But with regards to ilm al-fara'id and the knowledge of mirath, it is connected to death. And death, it is, as Allah Azza wa Jal said in the Holy Quran, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. This is the only thing that we are sure about. Death, it will come. And every single one of us, we own at least one or two things, whatever it may be. So as the ulama, they advise that we always prepare a will, and we all should take this initiative and take this step to start writing our will. As Mufti Abdul Rahman mentioned before, the hadith about updating will within every 3 days. This is something that we should start practicing, because we never know when we will die. And if we were to look around in society today, we see how many families, how much family ties are being cut with regards to wealth and with regards to land, whatever it may be. This is something very common. So it is time that we wake up and start taking action and start taking precaution before it is too late. So may Allah Azza wa Jal grant us the tawfiq to recognize the importance of the knowledge of inheritance and grant us the ability to learn it and put it into practice.
Should we in the middle here?
Let's close it with this out.
Okay. So is there a short question?
The question is basically to find out, like, in terms of doing a will, where should we seek that advice from, or where should we seek that guidance from? That's one. And if it is we doing a will, how will it affect in terms of the legal aspect, like laws of the country and that kind of thing? So you can close it up.
Mufti Rahman, you have closing words and comments? And you add the question?
You don't have time?
Yeah, one time.
So the Darul Uloom, in answer to Sherwin's question, where can you get an Islamic will done? The Darul Uloom does it. It is free of charge. Just call the office, make an appointment, and come in. And one of the people who there, myself, Mulana Shaw, maybe soon, once, inshallah, Mufti Majid, Mufti Wasim, we all do it. We share the responsibility of it. It is kept confidential, and it's free of charge. You can get an Islamic will done, and it will be legal according to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. And close one time, I would say that if anybody took one thing away from today's program, it is that start making the effort towards getting your will done. Put your Islamic estate in order, have an estate plan, and start working towards your debt, as Moana Sadiq is saying. And that's what an estate plan is. It is planning for your death. We plan for everything else. If we wanted to go to Disney World, we would plan for that. If we want to go for Umrah or Hajj, we would plan for that. If when a child is born, we are already planning what school they will go to and what degree they will complete. So we plan all the time. We plan and Allah plans. Allah's plan is that we will die. And our inheritance is part of the whole process of death. So get it done, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst those who listen and learn and put into practice whatever we learn.
Jazakallahu khair. My dear respected brothers and sisters, indeed you were very attentive and a lot of questions were asked, and I'm sure this will raise some more enthusiasm amongst ourselves, the ulama graduates of the Darul Uloom, who inshallah have been discussing this topic, and many of them who sit in these gatherings at the monthly meetings. We discuss these matters, and some of them are, or some majority of them who are sitting as well, they are imams of masajids in those areas as well. So these questions come to them on a regular basis. And we have to discuss these matters as well, because we need to know how to treat with it in our communities. And one of the concerns that we had is that many people, they do not, and the communities, they don't have that awareness, and sometimes even amongst ourselves, the ulama, we don't take it amongst ourselves the responsibility sometimes to go on a mountain member on a Friday Jummah and start to talk about what? Inheritance, because see, you talk about inheritance, you take up all the time and more time. But the fact is, the concern of wealth must be brought before us, because we work for this every day. And we inherit some as well, but we try to utilize from our energies, and so much energy is spent behind it. But it's all going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's construction of miras, that inheritance that is between the, whatever is in the heavens and the earth, it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore the laws that Allah put in place for it must be enacted. It must be practiced upon by Muslims in particular, because everyone is blessed. Even the non-Muslims are given sustenance. The creation is given sustenance. But Muslims, subhanallah, we submit to Allah, and our responsibility is in relationship to the laws that Allah placed for that particular important aspect of our life, that inheritance.